Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock, practicing necromancer. And tonight I'd like to kind of go over a couple of things. First of all, along my own path, I've been leaning quite heavily to the infernals, working with them, calling on them, meditating to the current and to the path that I walk. I've gone over I don't know how many grimoires, you know, Google searches, and gone to the library to pull up books, or at least copies of the books. I mean, I've gotten underneath Everend and pulled up PDFs and audiobooks on. I've lost track of how many books I've pulled up. But that's number one. So number one, you end up hitting that blockade of lack of information. You find that lack of information that just kind of prohibits you from going further. And when you hit that level, it kind of sucks because it forces you to go over everything that you've worked with, every whisper, or mantra, every meditational period, every ritual that you've been doing over the last 2 months, or 3 months. And so that leaves you with two possibilities, two different workings, if you will. And on one hand, you can go to these infernals or these beings that you work with and say, hey, this is what's gone on. What is there that I can do to further that and descend further into your domain? To have not only to grow within the infernal area of expertise, but the magical studies and the supernatural aspects as well. But then on the other hand, you also have the fact that you can go to your elders and go, hey, I need some help here. I don't reach out often for help. I try not to, because that is something that I think is and can lead to taking advantage of your teachers and your elders. It's like leaning too much on the spirits. If you lean too much on the spirits, and eventually they're just going to stop working with you, and it's kind of like, hey, put your big boy booties on and you know delve in and do the fucking work, you know? And that shit does happen. So I try not to delve into that area as much as possible, but in some rare occasions, you kind of have to. Like tonight and the other day. But I actually got notification that there's something that I could do that I didn't have before, information wise. So I reached out to that individual. So now it's a matter of waiting patiently and to see what the advice is that is given back, that is bounced back my way. The other aspect is what you do in your path workings develops into a working system for you, not only through knowledge, but also through practice. Taking notes and grimoires and stuff like that is always beneficial because it allows you to go back and really reflect upon what you've done. Now, the thing that I hate most, and yeah, I gotta say it really pisses me off when you get to that point and you find a name for an example, and you go to look for that name, and there is no record of it. And this does happen on occasion with certain systems of sorcery. And then you got to go into, I don't know how many countless hours. I believe a brother and I, we sat there on one name, and I want to say it was like 5.5 hours. We sat there and communicated over Facebook calling, messenger calling, and we finally figured it out because we had to go over different terminologies. Some cultures, depending on the era, you had to add a vowel, whereas others is a pronoun, and you know some are spelled differently and so forth. So you got to actually dwindle that down to find the entity, the demon or the god or goddess that you're looking for. So that does happen as well. But the thing that really intrigues you is when you realize that your path is similar to the modern day financial structure for somebody who's beginning to learn about finances, taxes, and say, for an example, investments. You know, you got to build that firm foundation, and the best way to do that is to look at it as a building block. Okay, if you put it on as a building block and you put those pieces together and you build that firm foundation, then you got one of two path workings here. One, you can build the house, or two, you can build a skyscraper. Again, it comes down to what you put into your path is what you're going to get out of it. And it was said a while back, I want to say it was like 2, maybe 3 years ago. I don't know. I've lost track of time. Another thing about spending so much time in meditation and working with your face in a book, you tend to lose track of what month it is, what day it is, what year it is. It's like every time you turn around, it's a whole nother month or whatever, and it's like, boom. So, but anyways, this particular thing was brought up and it was spoken on what you put into your practice and how far you take it is on you, depending on the path that you walk. Are you the type that's going to go into a cemetery after hours? Are you the kind that's going to, do, things that would normally make people cringe? It kind of puts things in perspective that most in the occult community are considered to be pussies, if you will. And these are the wusses that really are armchair magicians. They hide, computer keyboard warriors, and these people that don't have a lot of knowledge that think they're top dog, you know, and these kinds will try to hinder you. They will try to limit you. They will, hell, they'll even try to get your channel closed down. They'll block your videos or, delete your posts so that you can't have it seen within a Facebook group, for an example. Hence why I really don't get online much when I'm heavily into study and practice, because I want it to be isolation, to be in isolation when I do this. It would be like going into your temple and sitting down and taking, like, say, 5-10 minutes of just sitting there in complete darkness, breathing, quieting your mind, quieting your body. If you have restless leg syndrome, for an example, and you have ADHD, which affects your mind and your mental stability, then you're going to have to learn how to work Taoism into your practices to, control the blood flow, to relax your legs, or to calm your mind, to block out the distractions in your life. That's one of the things about the last 3 years that has I've really worked hard for, because since my son's mother and I separated, I've had to go back and get used to solitary confinement, you know, which I really don't mind. It's one of those things where when you go into a ritual temple, you've got to get your mind back of, okay, this is a whole other level of silence that you're not used to, because you've been with somebody, you've had a family, and you're used to noise, you're used to, people interrupting your meditational periods. It's that minimal distraction that you've got to deal with on your day-to-day basis. So the best thing to do is to lock in, you know, put on do not disturb on your phone, let your friends and family know, hey, I'm going to be locked in for a while. Don't reach out, because I'm not going to be there to answer for a while. I've taken the last couple of days just for me and me alone, which has been refreshing. It has been beneficial through study and practice. And I've gotten to, I've been able to go in and set up the altar the way I want for my two dogs that passed away, my two puppies. And I managed to do some rituals that were to honor them. But I also got time to sit there and do rituals and work with my patrons and patronesses as well. So, one of the things that I did want to bring up is one of the things that have come to my attention personally from other people is when you work with a system or a bunch of systems, why is it not beneficial to work with a number of beings and entities? Now, I can't speak to the full extent of that. That would go on for hours. But this is the small version of it. And I want you to think about this from an energetic perspective. One, if you work with, say, 50 entities, let's say you're working with the Goetic spirits, okay, of the Lesser Key of Solomon, or that of, say, Luciferianism, Michael W. Ford's variation of the Goetic spirits. Maybe you're working with the jinn. Same exact thing. If you're working with 50 spirits, all that connection is going to be like a phone signal that is dropping every 2 seconds. Okay? It's because you're out of distance, or you're in an isolated location that has no strong signal. You don't have the bars to have a very popular, and clear connection to these entities. That's because you've spread yourself out so thin that you're not going to have a strong connection with them. You're not going to have that identifying markers of their current, what they have to offer, what they can teach you, and how you can benefit from their tutelage. The other aspect of this same thing is that if you pick a small handful, and let's say, for an example, let's go with 5 to 8 entities, just 5 to 8, you're going to have 4 to 5 bars to work with. It's going to be coming across clear. It's going to become crystal clear in general. You're going to be able to understand what they're saying, what they're putting forth, and how they do things. Okay? So it's better to work with little groups, lesser beings, than the full extent in that manner. Now, with the issue that I'm having is because I've been leaning more to the warlock side of things lately. And it's kind of ironic because this started about a month ago. You guys know me. I'm a practicing warlock and a necromancer, and I love necromancia. I do. But when it comes to that warlock side of me, it deals with a lot of anger and it goes for that hungry for power. So I have to constantly balance myself and I have to constantly ground myself because I can't let my ego out of control and I definitely can't let my pride become counterproductive. Because that wouldn't benefit me or the path that I walk. And it definitely wouldn't, benefit my apprentices or my clientele. So what's ironic here is ever since Ringo passed away, I've been kind of cold inside. It's like something just snapped. It's broken. So I went in and I went to my patroness and I petitioned. I said, "This is what's going on. This is what I've been dealing with." And I even went to my other patroness too. You know, my my guardian, my teacher. And my sheik, if you will. And it was interesting because I was shown a specific symbol, you know, and I know it has something to do with the infernal realms, but I can't find anything on it. It reminds me of Scandinavian, runic style of Nordic mythology, but it's nothing there fits this particular symbol, this particular, you know, seal, if you will, if you want to call it a seal. And which is kind of frustrating because you don't know what it means. You don't know what it means. So you have to sit there and keep searching and you got to draw it, you got to meditate on it. You got to call on your patrons and patronesses and say, hey, I need help deciphering this. And by the end of the day, if you still haven't gotten that, then you got to reach out to your elders. And that, like I said, I don't like doing very often. You know, I want to depend on myself and the spirits that I work with, the entities. It's not a matter of pride. It's not a matter of ego. It's just a matter of ethics, if you will. And that's a good thing to have, especially with a routine that you do on a daily basis. So, on the level of descent or ascension, upon whichever path that you're on, it takes time to build that foundation. I spent 35 years as a practicing Satanist. I've been on the path of necromancy. I first got into necromancy pretty much about 8 years ago. The last 4 to 5 years, I've dedicated myself solely to necromancy. So this is my one of my very few videos that I've done where I've ran into a roadblock, if you will, which tells me that there's something I'm not seeing, something I didn't understand in the cross examination, if you will, or the lesson. And if that's so, then there's something I gotta pay attention to. So that deals with a lot of meditation. It deals with a lot of reflection. I've got to go over, well, if you take snapshots, a lot of photos. Okay. So just to find out, which which infernal being is sending this. And, when you petition for a spiritual guide, you know, the whoosh, if you will, and which is basically a demonic guide, a mentor, a spirit if you don't have a sheik, a teacher, or a mentor. So you really have to lean on the spirits and say, hey, can you send a spirit unto me to teach me and to guide me. And then you have to find out, okay, what's the spirit's name? What's this entity's name? You got to learn to connect to that particular um, current, that energy, that, the personality. And then you got to tune in like a radio signal and try to not only see that entity through, say, for an example, psionics, or say, for an example, evocation or invocational practices. Divination is another big thing that you can use. So you got all these tools and all these methods you can do that will benefit you along your path to be able to call these spirits forth. And then you got to figure out, is this symbol the symbol of, say, for an example, your teacher, your guide, that it was sent to you? Or is it something that they're trying to show you that is supposed to help you along your path of apotheosis? There's a lot of things that sadly go into this, and a lot of people, like I said, they hit a roadblock and then they try to go into another system and it fucks everything up. You can't do that. So it's better to simply take that step back, reflect, go over everything, confirm and identify everything, and if need be, go to your elders and go, hey, I've tried this. I've petitioned for this. I haven't gotten anything back, at least nothing concrete. You know, I'd like to take my practices further along this path working, this descent into the abyss, into the underworld, Gehenna, Sheol, hell. And a lot of people, they don't realize that no matter what path working you get into, let's say Asian Buddhism, they believe in multiple different hells. You go into the Christian perspective and you have the three types of prisons that are mentioned. You have the soul prison for the corrupted souls. Then you have the realm or the dimension that the demons have. And then you have that of the fallen. So you have three different, aspects. If you go into Catholicism, then you have heaven, hell, and purgatory. So you have all of these examples out there of different levels. I mean, hell, even Dante's Inferno speaks of 9 different levels. So you have to sit there and descend every single one of them. And to do that, you have to have that strong foundation. You have to have that understanding, and you've got to have that connection to Deitas to the point where they can guide you. You don't sell your soul, so don't even bring that up. They don't want your soul. They don't give a shit about your soul. You keep your soul. Forget that Christianized BS right off the bat, okay? So what is interesting here is when you connect to these spirits, they will guide you through knowledge and wisdom. And in some cases, if you're working with, say, I don't know, let's go with the Infernal Librarian, for example. Okay? From the books of, let's go with the Black Magic and Pacts by White. Let's go with the Lesser Key of Solomon, that deals with it. Let's go with the Grimorium Vernum, which speaks to him as well. Just to name a couple sources here. And I apologize, my eye is itching. It's that time of the year where allergies are kicked in, and plus I just came out of my temple too from meditation. So that didn't help. So these beings, like this infernal librarian, can bring you books and sources. Your patrons and patronesses can suggest things just as much as your elders can. And you never know which one's going to help you more until you petition and ask. So that is something that you can do. The path of necromancia, you're a lot. You can work with various different types of entities, spirits, and folk saints. For those of you who are voodooizants or into hoodooism, you're probably going to be working with the Orisha, or say, for an example, that of the Loa. If you're into demonolatry, Satanism, more of the black act, the black arts, you're you're probably going to be working a lot with the goetic spirits. And there's different rankings, different titles that they hold, but more so, they have different things that they can bring to your path working. For an example, in necromancia, you have Murmur, Bifram, and Seer. They teach different levels of necromancy and divination, spiritual communion, even. So, like I said, these are all options that you can do that is going to benefit you in the long run. Now, personally, I like going ghost mode from time to time because that will get me away from social media. It'll get me away from people. And it allows me to lock into the point where I get so pinpointed accuracy, if you will, to what I'm doing that I lose track of time. I lose track of days. They all blend in together. And then you got people that I haven't talked to for a while that will message me and go, "Hey, you okay? Haven't heard from you today or yesterday." And it's like, were we supposed to meet up? That shit happens. But it's there, you know? And like I said, I mean, even if you're walking down a road or you're driving down the road, you can even incorporate prayers, do mantras, whispers, even, and it will benefit you. It helps you connect to the current that you're working with. It helps you to build up that energy, that power level, if you will. But it will also help you to master things like curses, things like spells. You know, for an example, there's one that I use, and I'm not going to reveal it, and it literally changes the street lights from red to green. It could just turn red when you're on the, right up close. You have to slam on the brakes or slow it down, and you start on that, and within a few sayings, it literally turns green. So one might say that it control, a type of whisper can control the electronic devices. So other times, your emotions are tied into the elementals. So you end up creating a thunderstorm on a day that is supposed to be sunny and clear. Been accused of that a few times by my ex. I just let her know, "Hey, it's you. You're pissing me off. You're annoying me." But yeah, and like I said, there's all kinds of things that you can do to benefit yourself and connect yourself to Deities. But when you hit that roadblock, that's the thing that really becomes annoying, because when you hit that roadblock, you tend to have to take that step back and then kind of go back to basics and kind of evaluate everything and go, okay, this is where I was, this is where I'm at now. What can I do to get around or go through this roadblock to be able to go further into your studies, your ascent or descent, depending on your path workings and so forth. So, like I said, you can either petition for a patroness, a spiritual guide to come from that current and go, "Hey, can you teach me? Can you lead me along the way? Can you, go to your patron or patroness and say, 'Hey, I'm stuck on this. I've been, you probably know already that I've been going through all this for days, hours, and it's like I'm kind of at a standstill here. What's going on?'" Divination like cartomancy will help you. You know, um, Going to your elders, like I said. will benefit you too, because 9 times out of 10, they're gonna have information that you need. But it's a matter of being humble. It's a matter of being patient, remembering that their time is not your time, and that you have to wait on them. So sadly, that's the other downside to being on the left-hand path. So, so let me see here. Let's see. RPP222, welcome to the channel. Hey, brother Leo, welcome. Jeffrey, 524, welcome. It's been a while. Y2K, Leo, RL, welcome to the channel. I believe this is the first time I've seen you on this channel. You have to be a gamer? No, I don't game. I do have gaming systems, but I haven't touched those things in years. My son spends more time on them than I do, and he's 8, so that should tell you something. Papa Smoke, long time no see. Heard you got into what is it? The Shadow Zone. Last time I heard. I haven't been on for a while, so I haven't been able to see what's been going on. Billy Kidman, 1879. Why the hell would I want to go to heaven for? Sounds like the most boring place there is, especially from a Christianized perspective. So, and yes, Jeffrey, it has been a while, a long while. I actually got on the Dark Sorcery channel and realized it's been 10 months since the last time I did a video on that channel. 10 months. Yeah. That tells you how time flies when you're locked in and having a routine. If you're talking about the EAGM, I do work with. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he is my spiritual father, and he is the head. Jeffrey, welcome. Yes, 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 yes. So, anyways, but yeah, time flies when you have fun, Jeffrey. I'll tell you that right now. So, anyways, I want to thank everybody that's jumped on here with me. I gave you the 2 things that I wanted to say on here. I'm actually getting ready to head out tonight. There's actually a dojo that has reopened nearby, and I want to go check it out. And the instructor is actually teaching late nights, so which is awesome for me because I'm more of a night owl. And since I'm heavily into the Japanese culture, such as Bushido and Shintoism practices, I found it interesting that this instructor, he teaches a form of Japanese martial art. So, and he does it from an Okinawan perspective, from what I can gather. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he'll take me on as an apprentice, as a student. So it's like, yes. And yeah, I spent the last few months, building my body from the ground up, which has been hell. My joints have been screaming. My body has been screaming. It's been fun. And I started out with Tai Chi, went into Qigong, Taoism, and then finally calisthenics. And I'm now doing things that I haven't done in 15 years. 15 freaking years. I've got a routine going, and I want to keep that going. I want to keep that, not just my magical studies, my connections with spiritists, but also my physical ones as well. I'm actually getting ready to go back into the world and going back to work. So I've been applying to jobs again and basically looking to get back to where I was 10, 11 months ago. It's been almost a year since I stepped away from the world. And I'm looking forward to going back. You know, I don't want to, but it's something that I think that needs to be done. So I'd rather just run my own business, but what are you going to do when you don't have clients? You know what I'm saying? And you do have dry spells. If you have a practitioner says that they don't have a dry spell from time to time, they're fucking lying to you, because you will have dry spots. I haven't had a client in what's it been now, about 3 months. Yeah, it was right around the time Ryder passed away, because I had somebody that was interested in becoming a client, and since then he's basically been dicking me around, so I blocked his ass. I told him to grow a pair and either step up or step down. Well, thank you. So, anyways, like I said, there's a lot that I've been doing over the last year, more so over the last few months. And like I said, it's time to go back. So, cool. So, like I always give you guys two pieces of information. Number one, whatever you preach, always back it up and give sources and references. I've done that. I've given you a couple of sources and references that you can look into. That shows you that things I'm saying is actual practices, especially in demonolatry. If you're looking at, say, for example, working with just evocations and invocations, or that of, say, working with folk saints, getting into other magical systems like the African Caribbean traditions, perhaps shamanism, necromancia, Satanism, whatever, then you got to get into those systems and go with the spirits that they work with. Like I said, there's all kinds of them worldwide. I happen to agree with Kane Hustle that the older the works, the better. I got my hands on a few books that have been banned in most countries. Fucking love those books. I mean, just the first couple of chapters, it's like I can see why these books are banned. I'm currently reading a book on the IRS, the fair tax, and just seeing how the taxes work, learning about the finances, and all that stuff. It's awesome to see, and to see what's valuable and how to make money work for you. So, I mean, you look at I Will Make You Rich, for an example, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Modern Money Mechanics by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago is another great book. And then you have Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for an example, by Robert Kiyosaki. You know, it's ironic that he actually stole the works from his buddies from back in the 70s. So, a friend of mine and brother actually sent me a video on the original sources of what's put in that book. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that he doesn't know what he's talking about, because let's face it, Robert Kiyosaki is like a billionaire. But still, to steal it from your buddies, uncool. That's all I got to say. And the other thing, and the other aspect to this is this. Always make yourself available to the public, because you are responsible for the things that you do and say. You are responsible as an emissary to the spirits, and you are an emissary to the people. So you answer to both. Okay? And if you belong to a lodge, a cabal, a temple, or a coven, you represent those foundations. So you have to be respectful, you have to be honorable, you have to put your best foot forward and say, hey, this is what I do, this is what I practice, this is my beliefs, and just be honest and keep the sources and the materials pure. I don't work with corrupted materials. I don't. I don't support them either. So, with that said, wherever you are in the world, have a good day or a good night, and feel free to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification button with you. Okay? That way you won't miss when I'm on again. Have a good day and a good night, and until next time, I'm out.